Good evening, race fans. This is Rob from the Area 51 Racing Podcast. Tonight's episode 62. I'm going to be doing my weekly race recap for this past weekend's races at Martinsville for the Truck, Xfinity, and Cup Series, along with talking about the current events that happened this past week after the Wreckfest and the Xfinity and Truck Series races at Martinsville and the fallout as a result of that has become a hot topic among veteran drivers within the series, along with legends in the sport, such as Mark Martin, Kevin Harvick, and current drivers and team owners Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin. So on that note, we'll get started here. I'm sorry it's late. It looks like almost 9:45 Central Standard Time here in Wisconsin, so I apologize, but I'm doing this late because we had some really bad storms that went through, and I didn't want to start the podcast and then all of a sudden lose power and then have to start all over again. So first, everybody being affected by this storm, be safe. I know I just chatted with Bobby not too long ago, who lives in Ohio, and they're getting hammered with some pretty severe weather. So I pray for their safety and everybody else's safety, especially this storm system that's going through is not good. It's already spawned some tornadoes and stuff in the south that I've seen, and I just pray for safety for everyone. And on that note, I'll start out with this week's race report is brought to you by Boost Pops. Boost Pops is a veteran-owned company based in Charleston, South Carolina. The founder's name is Woody. He's been on our podcast a couple times last year. A really great guy. He's funny guy. Like I said, he's a military veteran. He started Boost Pops. They are, if you're not aware or familiar with them, they are basically little tube type popsicles that you used to get as a kid, except these have alcohol with your favorite flavors of mixed drinks in them. You can order these through Woody's website, or Boost Pops website, I should say, at www.boostpops.com. You can also request one of the mobile vans that Woody and his team own, where they will come to your event and set up and sell Boost Pops at your event. Or you can even buy them in some of the stores in the North and South Carolina areas. If you are out on the lakes in the Charleston, South Carolina area, Woody does have a Boost Pops boat, so you may be able to purchase some Boost Pops while you're out on the lake enjoying the beautiful weather. If it's warm out, I guarantee you Woody's going to be out in his boat and or in a van selling his products. So check them out. Boost Pops is a partner of our podcast, like I said, and give them a shout out. This segment, the Jeremy Clements Racing report and the NASCAR Xfinity Series race results report is sponsored this week brought to you this week by Boost Pops. Friday was practice for the Xfinity Series. Jeremy Clements and team did 4 runs, 27 total laps. His car was a little loose and off the corner and tight in the center. They made some adjustments to make the car a little bit better turning, but the more they adjusted, the more issues they had with the car handling and balance wise. And they also had an issue with the car bouncing coming off corners. They also had an issue with the power steering under low speed. It was hard for Jeremy to turn the car. And according to the radio traffic between Jeremy and Case Kallenbach, his crew chief, it had something to do with a pulley was too big on the power steering unit pump, that they needed to get a smaller one to make the power steering work better. They ended up going out for qualifying. They qualified P22. Car got way too tight, and Jeremy said he couldn't get it to turn. Saturday was the race. Weather and conditions were different, and it really impacted the way the rubber laid down on the track. It was warmer, and the handling of Jeremy's car and some of the other cars on track. Per the CW booth analyst, they stated that this was Jeremy Clement's 400th consecutive NASCAR Xfinity Series start. They said there are only 9 other drivers in NASCAR history that have 400 or more consecutive starts in their career. Another amazing accomplishment for an independent driver who owns their own team, small team. It's a testament to Jeremy, his family, and all of his partners and sponsors through the year to make this possible. Just is amazing, and he's just breaking records like crazy. Like, I think it was like 3 races ago, he got his, or 4 races ago, I think it is now, he got his 500th career start at COTA in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and he's 4th all time on the list for career starts in the Xfinity Series. Just like I said, unbelievable accomplishments for Jeremy and his team and family. This weekend, Jeremy had the sponsorship of Kevin Whitaker Chevrolet from South Carolina on his car. They did a Martinsville hot dog stand livery. It was awesome. It replicated the sign on the hot dog stand on the infield for where they sell the famous Martinsville hot dogs. Car looked amazing again. Mike Michelli, the artist, knocked it out of the park. Great idea. Kevin Whitaker Chevrolet, the partner on the car, coming up with the idea. Car looked, like I said, really, really cool and stood out and got a lot of TV time on TV, which was good. Stage 1 didn't go so well. Jeremy right away said, yep, my car's not working like it did yesterday. It's extremely tight. Towards the end of the stage, there was a caution, and Case and Jeremy discussed back and forth under the caution if they should stay out till the end of the stage so they could take their wave around to get back on the lead lap, as they had gone a lap down because of the ill-handling car. They decided to stay out, and then on at the end of the stage, and then wish or hope that they would get a caution early in the second stage so they could come in and do adjustments and take tires. The other reason why they decided to stay out is they had just pitted on lap 54, and they only had 6 tires on the laps at the end of the stage, so they figured they'd save tires and be on a different pit strategy as the other cars. Plus, they wouldn't take the wave around and get their lap back and be on the lead lap. Stage 2, they finished P27. Same thing. Handling, super tight car. They were lucky, though. They did get an early caution on lap 61 when 3 cars were involved in a wreck. Jeremy radio Case saying, thank God. Like, he was relieved, thank God, that finally their luck turned and it went their way for once. They made adjustments, like I said, but it just didn't make a difference. Jeremy said that the more rubber that's laid down on the track, the worse his car gets. He said it's wheel hopping and bouncing in the corners, and asked Case what they needed to do to make the car better the next time they come back to Martinsville. Case said that the bouncing may be from a bad shock. He said that they will have to test the shock when they get back to the shop to see if that was the case. And if it's not, then look further into why the car was bouncing as bad as it was in the corners. Jeremy at one point came on the radio and said, "There is no clean passing today. Everybody is bumping cars to move out of the way. The 30 or us out of the way. I'm sorry. The 39 car of Ryan Sieg had no reason to bump us and move us to pass, and he did. This Jeremy obviously was frustrated, and if you watch the race, you'll know exactly what he was making reference to. Everybody on the track was getting ran through by a bunch of these younger drivers from the truck series that had moved up to the Xfinity series, and some of the younger regulars in the Xfinity series were just driving through people, not trying to pass them cleanly, just wrecking them. Bump and run is one thing, but driving through a car and putting them in the wall or making them spin out is another thing. Just crazy. There's, especially early in the race, there's no reason for it. During the second stage, Jeremy Spotter RC also mentioned to Case that he had seen smoke coming out the right side of Jeremy's car for half of the race. He said he couldn't see any tire rubs or anything visible causing the smoking, but he would keep an eye on it, and Case said he would as well. They also, like I said, gambled and didn't take tires on one pit stop during the second stage when a majority of the field did, in hopes of saving the tires for later to get an advantage on the other cars by having an extra set of tires towards the end of the race when it mattered more, as there was a lot of fall off at this track, and new tires did make a difference. Stage 3, the tightness and ill handling car continued. In fact, it started getting worse. Then Jeremy ended up having his engine temp go up. They got the Hendrick Motorsports engine people involved as they run their engines in Jeremy's car. The person monitoring the situation with Case and Jeremy from Hendricks gave Jeremy some pointers on what to do. Or I should say, gave Case, his crew chief, pointers as far as what to do to try to get the engine to cool down. Especially at one point, they're under a red flag for a wreck. He kept having them recycle the engine, but the engine wasn't cooling off for some reason. They just said to continue monitoring it, and ultimately, then when the car was refired, the engine shut off, like they've had the past 3-4 races where he's lost fuel pressure for some reason. However, this time he was able to get the car refired and didn't have any more issues. Excuse me. On lap 217, caution came out for a wreck involving Carson Kvapil in the 1 car, Jesse Love in the 2 car, and Christian Eckes in the 16 car. At this time, Case, Jeremy's crew chief, radioed him and asked Jeremy if he made it through that wreck cleanly or if he had got some damage. Jeremy frustratingly said on the radio, "I have had every effing thing besides me in this thing. There ain't a clean car out here." And like I said, you could tell Jeremy was really frustrated and really upset with the way everybody was driving. Or I shouldn't say everybody, a majority of the field was driving. On lap 242, Jeremy was running P14. when the 88 car of Connor Zilich and the 18 car of William Swalich made contact one with one another, which resulted in the cars coming up the track and caused Jeremy to be pushed into the wall. Fortunately, there was no significant damage done to Jeremy's car. However, as a result, he had to drop back to P25. There was another wreck with only a couple laps left in the race. The 54 car, Taylor Gray, and the 8 car, Sammy Smith, were racing extremely hard and bumping each other, using the bumper to move each other out of the way, racing really aggressively. It got to the point where Taylor Gray in the 54 car passed Sammy Smith and got a 2-car length lead. At this point, Sammy Smith drove the car straight into the corner without lifting in turn 3 and intentionally rear-ended Gray, sending Gray into the wall. Then, coming to the checkered flag, Smith then wrecked his own teammate, number 7, Justin Allgaier, coming to the start-finish line after he was rear-ended by Austin Hill, which ended up causing a big wreck on the front straightaway. Clements was able to get through the wreckage and finish P14. Austin Hill in the 21 car made it through the carnage and won the race, giving RCR their 100th NASCAR Xfinity Series victory. After the race, Case spoke with Jeremy briefly about the race and finishing P14. After having a bad handling car, Jeremy was extremely frustrated. Even though they did get a top 15 finish, he told Case after the race ended, "We have to figure some shit out here." He was, again, really frustrated, and I think they're still working out a bunch of bugs because Case obviously is a new crew chief. Gabe Wood is the new car chief. They got a lot going on. They only have, I think, 4 full-time people working in the shop. They're a small team. They don't have the big funds like these other teams. And they have 12 straight races, I believe it is, to start the season where they have to get all these cars prepared. So, I understand the frustration and everything that Jeremy is stating. I don't think it's a dig on his team or anything. It's more just out of frustration that bad luck has just been happening this year for some reason. This was another Dash for Cash race. Since Austin Hill won, he won the $100,000. The qualifiers for the next Dash for Cash race at Darlington Speedway this coming weekend is Austin Hill in the 21 RCR Chevy, Sheldon Creed, the 00 Haas Factory Team Ford, Justin Allgaier, and the number 7 Junior Motorsports Chevy. And then finishing P4, I think probably a career best. I could be wrong, but I'm guessing it's a career best for Brendan Poole in the number 44 Chevy for Team Alpha Prime. That was awesome to see. Brendan's a good driver, a good person. Good to see a good finish finally for Team Alpha Prime and Brendan Poole. They work hard, and it paid off this weekend. Jeremy currently sits in 21st in driver's points. He did make up 1 spot this weekend with the P14 finish, so I guess we're trending in the right direction again. Instead of going down, we're going up. This weekend's race is at Darlington Raceway on Saturday at 4/5/25 at 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And this is the Xfinity race I'm talking about. Tune into the CW to watch the race. This is my favorite race weekend of the year. It's throwback weekend. The reason why it's my favorite is I'm a huge NASCAR history lover, and as you can see, I wore my Miller American Racing Bobby Allison and Mark Martin racing throwback hat back to the days when they were sponsored by Miller. And then I also have my Mark Martin ASA Throwbacks hoodie on tonight. So, and the other reason, like I said, I love the throwback weekend because a lot of the teams had these iconic liveries from drivers that I watched growing up as a kid. And they pay homage to these drivers and their history of the sport with these throwback liveries. Speaking of that, Jeremy Clements number 51 Chevy is sponsored by Harrison's this weekend at Darlington, and they have a throwback to 1985 livery of Harry Gant's Skull Bandit. It is an amazing looking car. Harrison's just the other day released an order or pre-order for t-shirts for this weekend. You can get them in green or black. Go to www.harrisonsusa.com to place your order. And then today, Circle B Diecast released a standard version in 124, a color chrome version in 124, and a standard version in 164 of Jeremy's Skull Bandit throwback diecast. So if you want to order one, go to www.circlebdiecast.com and make sure at checkout you enter our discount code AREA51 so you get $6 off your shipping. I ordered my t-shirt the other day and my diecast today, pre-ordered both. Looking forward to getting both of them and adding them to my collection. Moving on to the Craftsman Truck Series race that was on Friday night. That too was unfortunately a wreck fest. A lot of it had to do with a lot of young new drivers and them being overly aggressive, driving through people and not instead of trying to pass them. On lap 187, towards the end of the race, Ty Majeski, who was battling with Corey Heim for a while for the lead in the race, back and forth, and along with Lane Riggs and Caden Honeycutt, I should say Majeski wheel hopped inside Caden Honeycutt in turn one, causing both to spin from the lead into the wall, bringing it out of caution. And just prior to that, there was a caution between Honeycutt and Heim where Honeycutt and Heim got together on a restart and Heim cut down a tire, which caused him to lose the lead and then have to pit to change his tire. So on lap 192, the restart, they re-racked Tyler Ankrum and Jake Garcia and Daniel Hemrick all battled for the lead. And then eventually on lap 196, Daniel Hemrick cleared Tyler Ankrum and didn't give up the lead and ended up winning his first race since several years ago when he was in the truck race or truck series. I think it was like, I can't remember. It was like 5,000 some starts since, or days or something. I can't remember what it was. It was since he won his last truck series race. And then in Daniel Hemrick historic fashion, his famous backflip off the roof to celebrate his win. He did that when he exited his truck after doing his burnout on the front stretch at the start-finish line. It was good to see Daniel back in victory lane. He's one of the good guys in racing. He won an Xfinity Series championship. He's bounced around between the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series. He's a veteran driver. He's been in the sport for a long time. So again, it was good to see him get his first win this year and lock himself into the playoffs. Like I was saying, this was definitely a wreck fest again, similar to the Xfinity race. There was 10 caution flags, including the 2 for the first and second stage breaks. Just, I don't know, just stupid driving. One new driver to the Truck Series was Luke Baldwin. He got his first career Truck Series start in the number 66 ThorSport Racing Ford. He was extremely fast in practice. I think it was P1 or 2 in practice, but then he qualified bad. Didn't have a great run in qualifying. I think he qualified like P27-ish. He is the son of Tommy Baldwin Jr., former NASCAR crew chief and NASCAR team owner of Tommy Baldwin Racing. His dad currently owns Tommy Baldwin Racing Team that fields modifieds in the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, where Luke races part-time in the NASCAR Whelen Modified Series for his dad's team. Luke was very aggressive. His dad, after the race, was interviewed by the TV reporter on pit road, and his dad said his son drove the truck like he was driving a modified into some of the corners, and it was obvious. At one point, he drove over the corner curb, entering a corner, making it 3 wide, where he put his nose underneath the lowest lane truck and ended up wrecking himself as a result. He spun 2 times during the race. I think he just needs more experience driving in the series. I mean, he did go to the rear and drive back up through the field a couple times. So according to his dad, it sounded like he's supposedly going to be running a couple more races in the ThorSport 66 truck. I guess I'm going to talk in a little bit about the Cup and Xfinity, the Xfinity and truck race, and the lack of respect, the rough racing and such, when I give my thoughts for the week. But I want to give basically the Cup race results. So basically, it was for the most part, a clean race. It was a lot better than the truck and Xfinity race, and I don't think I'd ever say that, because my favorite race is the racing series, the Xfinity series, and Bobby and Dave have the same opinion. But this week, I truly, as a fan, was embarrassed by how, not only in the Xfinity series but the truck series, how bad they raced. I mean, it would just look like a demo derby instead of an actual race. But kudos to the Cup drivers. I mean, there were a few incidents, but like I said, nothing like the carnage that was caused in the Xfinity and truck race. Denny Hamlin dominated the race. He got a win again, like at Martinsville, his home state track. He was like his old self back in the day where he dominated racing at Martinsville. This was Denny's 55th Cup Series win, and he ties the NASCAR Hall of Famer and legend Rusty Wallace at 11th on the list all time for Cup Series wins. That's pretty impressive. I guess I didn't really realize. I knew Hamlin had quite a few wins, but not as many recently. But that's an impressive list to be on, and especially tying Rusty Wallace, one of the all-time greats of NASCAR. that's pretty much all I have for the Cup race report. The biggest thing I want to get into is this cluster that was the truck race and the Xfinity race, especially the Xfinity race. It's been a huge topic of conversation this whole week on various podcasts. Dale Jr.'s Download, Denny Hamlin's podcast, Door Bumper Clear podcast. You name it, it's been a topic of conversation. And even like other media outlets on social media have even talked about it. And, you know, I'll give my opinion on it for what it's worth. I mean, I'm just a fan and a guy that loves racing that does a podcast. And you may or may not agree with me, but I don't know. I'm going to base my opinions and comments on some of the information that I've heard and seen from some of these other drivers, such as Hall of Famer and great Mark Martin, who gave his opinion on the Door Bumper Clear podcast. Legendary NASCAR driver Brad Keselowski and team owner of RFK. He made a comment to Fox Sports or Fox broadcast team about it. Like I said, Denny Hamlin made a comment about it on his Actions Detrimental podcast, and then Kevin Harvick even mentioned something on his podcast. And then you have Xfinity Series veterans that made some social media posts on X. Like, for example, Jeremy Clements, who rarely says anything. He said something, I think it was early or sometime last season when Sammy Smith started an argument with him. And I'm sorry, not Sammy Smith, Chandler Smith. And then Ryan Ellis and then Justin Allgaier made a comment in his post-race interview. And then part-time Xfinity and Cups or Truck Series driver Stefan Malausi also made a comment about the racing. I mean, if you're getting this much attention from current drivers and legendary drivers and Cup Series drivers about how the racing was, there is a problem, and NASCAR needs to do something about it. NASCAR did actually do something about it. So as a result of Sammy Smith intentionally admitting post-race in an interview that he wrecked Taylor Gray for bump and running him a few laps previous in the race, that he did it to pay him back for that. And then also for under the red flag for Gray flipping him the bird, and then also under caution laps swerving at his race car, that he intentionally drove his car into the turn 3 and intentionally punted Gray out of the way from the lead into the wall and wrecked him. Again, as paid back. That's just, in my opinion, a bunch of BS. That's a terrible decision. And NASCAR made a decision not to suspend him, which I don't understand, because they suspend crew members for a tire that comes loose off of a car during a race, along with the jackman and the tire the tire changer. I shouldn't say that they don't suspend the driver, but they suspend crew members for it and fine the team, but which is a safety issue. But this, in my opinion, is more of a safety issue, and they don't suspend the driver that actually could have possibly potentially hurt and or killed a driver by intentionally putting him into the wall head first. I don't get it. So NASCAR didn't suspend him, docked Sammy Smith 50 driver's points. And I saw Bob Podcrass post about this on social media. That's where I got this information from. So thank you, Bob, for sharing this. You're a great journalist and asset to the NASCAR community. He was basically saying that NASCAR's reasoning for not suspending him is that 50 points is more than what a driver could potentially earn in a race. So they felt that docking him 50 driver's points would be sufficient enough and worse than a suspension. Also fined this week was Taylor Gray. I apologize. Tanner's his brother who also races. So Taylor Gray, who went to confront Sammy Smith at the Infield Care Center, and they ended up getting in an argument. And unfortunately, NASCAR security was there to keep them apart, because if they wouldn't have, the security wasn't there, they would have definitely gotten a fight. And then Jeb Burton also went to the Infield Care Center and confronted a driver inside the care center as well. And he too ended up with Gray getting a $5,000 fine for their conduct for confronting a driver inside the Infield Care Center. So Dale Jr. Posted that Junior Motorsports will not contest the penalty given to his driver, Sammy Smith. Jeb Burton acknowledged what he did and took accountability for his actions. I haven't seen or heard anything from Gray. But yeah, to get into this a little deeper, Door Bumper Clear, Mark Martin was on there, and they were talking about Sammy Smith's interview post-race, and Mark Martin's, and I agree with Mark on pretty much everything that he says. I have the same beliefs about NASCAR as he does. I wished NASCAR would have like a committee of legendary racers such as Mark to be ahead of the discipline and education of for these younger drivers getting into the sport, because the sport is just going downhill, the racing quality, because of these kids are raised where they're racing in say Bandoleros, Legends, late models, super late models, whatever it may be. Their family is paying for their ride majority of the time. A lot of these kids don't have to work on their cars, and they don't have to pay for the damage when they wreck a car. And all they care about is winning at all costs. So instead of cleanly racing and cleanly passing somebody, they'll just drive right through you and punt you and wreck your car. And unfortunately, not all these drivers, but a majority of them have grown up with this mentality, and it's passed on into the Truck Series and then the Xfinity Series, and on occasion in the Cup Series. Carson Hocevar is a prime example in the Cup Series, Truck Series, and Xfinity, where there's been issues. So I don't know. In my opinion, like Mark Martin was, to get back what Mark was saying, is he said, it does take balls for Sammy Smith to admit what he did, which I do agree with, because by admitting that, he had to know that he was going to get a suspension and or fine. And so I give him credit for being honest, but at the same time, you can't be doing that. There's no there's no buddy that's, I've heard, I think it was Kyle Busch maybe. There's no Cup drivers. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Kyle Busch. It was Kenny Wallace and Kenny Schrader on their podcast. They were talking about this, and they both were saying that there's no Cup drivers like back when they raced in Xfinity that would, if you did something like this after the race, they come and grab you by the throat between the haulers and tell you, don't do this shit anymore, or you're not going to be in the sport for long. So, I don't know if that needs to happen, if some of these Cup drivers need to step up. Team owners, for example, Brad Keselowski, like I said, it was posted on Twitter. I saw a post from him that said, I'm sorry, I'll grab it right here. I want to make sure I quote this properly. The solution needs to come from the car owners, not NASCAR. Until the car owners are willing to park their drivers for getting this out of control, very little will change. I agree with Brad 100%. And that's coming from a car owner and a driver. So, these kids are not paying for the damage. They're not having to work on these cars and repair them. I mean, Sammy Smith, okay, wrecked his car, and then he wrecked Justin Allgaier's car. So there's two race cars for Junior Motorsports that are wrecked. And then he cost Justin Allgaier the win, potentially, and the $100,000 for being the top finisher in the Dash for Cash series, as he would have been the top of the 4 drivers qualified to win the $100,000 for the Martinsville race. So now, being docked 50 points, and I know he was fined $25,000 too. I think Sammy Smith was. I don't get it. I mean, maybe they need to start making these kids pay. Every car that's wrecked, you intentionally do something like Sammy Smith did, then every team's car that was wrecked because of your stupidity, you get the bill and your ass is paying for it. Maybe that's a solution. Maybe they'll start thinking about it, or maybe NASCAR black flags them and parks them. Maybe that will get their attention. I mean, these blatant intentional acts, I don't care what level it's at in racing, at any level of racing, you should be suspended, flat out suspended. Just, you're not going to get their attention unless you take something away from them that they love to do and is their livelihood. If you take away that money and the pay and their seat time, then maybe it will get their attention. I mean, I agree with Brad 100%. These car owners, maybe pull them out of the car for a race, suspend them yourself. I mean, what does this look like? Sammy Smith driving, intentionally wrecking a car because he's pissed at him because he did it to him previously, and he openly admits it after the race. And you're representing your sponsors and your partners on your race car and on your fire suit, and you just did some chicken shit bullshit move by intentionally wrecking a car and admitting to it on TV. That, makes you look like a dirty driver. If I was a partner or sponsor, I'd be reluctant to want to partner with somebody like that. I mean, Sammy Smith is a good young driver. Don't get me wrong, but he and some of these other drivers need to learn you can't just drive through people. It's called racing, not wrecking. Yeah, you can rubbing is racing. You can give somebody the bumper, get them loose to pass them. Okay, that's one thing. Another thing is to just drive right through them and wreck them and dump them is stupid. I don't care, again, what level of racing it is. It's just dumb. I mean, when I was a part of a race team, we raced in the NASCAR Wheel and All-American Series, Rockford Speedway. They had a tap out rule. I don't think this would ever work in NASCAR, but it didn't a lot of times work at Rockford either. But the cars that were involved in the crash, no matter who was responsible, went to the rear. No matter what part of the race it was, they all went to the rear. If it happened on the last lap, the car that caused it and the cars involved, the field was froze. They went to the end of the field. That's where they finished. Unless the driver who caused the incident takes responsibility and taps on the roof, as they call it, the tap out rule. And I don't see this happening in NASCAR because a lot of these kids don't give a shit. So they're not going to man up and say, hey, oh, yep, that was my fault, because they have the win at all cost mentality. And another thing is, I blame NASCAR too for a lot of this because of the way their point system is set up. You got this I'm a purist of NASCAR. I grew up watching NASCAR in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, what I call the golden era of NASCAR. You had the Winston Cup Series points. It was a season-long point system. You didn't have stage breaks. You didn't have playoffs. You didn't have playoff points. You didn't have any of that stuff. You raced every week, and you got points. And then wherever you finished at the end, that's the way it should be. That's the way a lot of the short tracks around here, operate throughout the United States. I just don't understand. I don't know. It's like a gimmick to me. I don't know. In my opinion, by putting stage breaks in, it allows the teams to not strategize as much, because they know there's at lap 25, there's going to be a caution. So we can do a pit stop under yellow, not lose our spot unless we have a bad pit stop. There's no strategy to it anymore. And it leads to this, I need to win to get locked into the playoffs. Therefore, it'll make my owner happier. It'll make my partners happier. And I'll get extra money for being in the playoffs, and then I have the ability to possibly win a championship. I mean, they could win one race and get into the championship, whereas you could have a person be consistent every week, finish in the top 5. And if, let's say, the Cup Series, I think the top 16 drivers make the playoffs. If that person, there were 16 winners, that person that was consistent every week gets screwed. And that's not fair at all. I don't get it. I mean, I don't know. I could go on about it, but I wanted to get to a couple more tweets about this whole thing, and share, because they go along exactly with what I'm saying. And Jeremy Clements, 504 career NASCAR Xfinity Series starts. He's the longest tenured driver for Chevrolet. He's the longest tenured driver in the Xfinity Series. He just had his 400th consecutive NASCAR Xfinity Series start this last weekend at Martinsville. The guy is a veteran of the sport, the nicest guy. He is not a dirty driver at all. I mean, if he wanted to, he could, believe me. He obviously gets mad and frustrated. And I think sometimes a lot of drivers may take advantage of him because they know he's not going to retaliate against them. But this is his tweet, and I think it was right after the race or maybe the next day, but it says, quote, "Really disappointed in the lack of respect on the track tonight. It's a disgrace to this great series. Not many out there raced without just running into the guy in front of them. Not sure what we do to clean it up, but something must be done." Now, if it was me that I was reading this, and I'm a competitor, Jeremy Clements, and know he is the senior statesman, basically, of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And I am also NASCAR's sanctioning body. I would be like, damn, this is a problem. We need to correct this and take care of it. And, you know, that's not happening. And you know, Jeremy is a small independent team. They have to fix all their own race cars, pay for all their own parts. They don't have an extremely large budget like Junior Motorsports, where they have like 4 teams and hundreds of employees. They have like 4 or 5 guys that work in the shop. They have a couple gals that work in the office, and you know, his family. And then they have the pit crew that comes on race weekends, and his traveling pit guys that come with him. And you know, they're not a big team. So, you know, NASCAR has to look at how this is financially impacting these small teams. I mean, Jeremy's not the only small team and veteran driver that said something. You know, another tweet, Stefan Malazzi, he's a part-time truck series driver of the number 2 Rimet Brothers Ford F-150 in the truck series. He's driven part-time also in the Xfinity series. He's a grassroots racer that drives a late model race car. And his tweet was, "It is obvious that an overwhelming majority of this Xfinity field has never had to pay for damage to their own race car." And this got a response from NASCAR Xfinity Series veteran driver Ryan Ellis, that, you know, he's raced in the Cup Series, Xfinity Series. He's a veteran. And Ryan's response to that is, quote, "There is a solid group of veterans who have been in the series for more than 3 to 4 years who don't ever race this way. There are several names I could drop who race great, but I don't want to forget anyone. In most cases, the racing we see in Truck Series shows up in the Xfinity Series when those kids move in." And that is 100% accurate. And unfortunately, it's allowed in the Truck Series. So if they know nothing's going to happen to them there, they move up to the Xfinity Series, they're going to expect the same thing. Nothing's going to happen. And, you know, Ryan ended up doing a follow-up tweet to that, which stated, quote, "The worst part about last night's race, in my opinion, is that it represented the opposite of everything that made me fall in love with racing when I was a kid. I fell in love with this sport because of the art and chaos of finding speed, creativity in setting up passes, etc. It can truly seem like art. Don't get me wrong, there can an art skill in moving someone, but there is no skill in plowing 6 cars into each other or just blasting it off into the curb at the last minute." And I agree. And, you know, Austin Hill, to win the race, punted Sammy Smith out of the way into his teammate so he could win. So, I mean, and Austin Hill's a veteran driver of the series as well. So it's not, you know, my point also, what I'm getting at is it's just not these new kids. It's some veteran drivers as well. And again, I think it goes back to the way NASCAR has this whole format set up for the point system. I honestly, truthfully think the owners need to step up, like Brad Keselowski said, suspend these people. NASCAR needs to not only fine them, but suspend them. And then the bill for all the damage that they created goes to their team, and they have to pay for it. You know, that there's something has to be done to get their attention, because finding somebody 25 grand and taking 50 driver's points away from them is not going to do it. It's just not. You need to suspend them. because they're going to do it again. And hopefully NASCAR takes notice and listens to, like Kevin Harvick, Mark Martin, Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin. They all have the same sentiments that I just talked about. Something needs to be done. NASCAR needs to step up, and the team owners need to step up. I mean, there's nothing else that can be done unless that happens, because this is just going to continue. Yeah, Martinsville is a short track, infamous for that type of racing, but this was just, it was stupid. The Xfinity cars couldn't even run 1 to 2 laps without wrecking towards the end of the race. It ended up being the most cautions. I take it back. It was the eighth. I think it was the 8th most cautions ran in a race in the Xfinity Series history. There was 102 caution laps out of the 256 laps run in the race, the Xfinity race. They were under caution. And that ended up being the 48th most caution laps in a single race event across all 3 top series of NASCAR in history. Come on, we can do better than this. I like I said, I'm embarrassed as a race fan for my favorite series, the Xfinity Series. I wish, like I said, Mark Martin and some of these legendary drivers that raced back in the day when this shit wasn't acceptable, would be given the opportunity by NASCAR, if they wanted to be on a committee to deal with this stuff. And, I hope these kids start learning and are being held accountable again before somebody gets hurt or killed. So sorry to ramble on. Just got a little fired up about this week. Made me sad when I watched that race, Xfinity race. Like I said, it's my favorite series to watch racing. I think it's the best racing in NASCAR. But this week, a lot of the drivers let me down, and I was bummed and sad about it. So, but on that note, join me, I guess, on Monday, is April 5th, I believe it is. I will be doing my race recap for this weekend at Darlington, and will be more than likely around 7 or 8 p.m. Central Standard Time when I do it. Again, sorry I'm doing it so late tonight, but it was because of bad weather here. I just, like I said earlier, I didn't want to start the podcast and then power goes out or something, and then I have to start all over again. So on that note, thank you everybody for joining in, listening. Bobby, Dave, and I greatly appreciate it. Last night, I wasn't able to be on the podcast with Bobby and Dave. They interviewed Rick Armstrong from Henderson Jet Services. I watched and listened to the podcast today. Very good. Rick is a character, a good guy, a lot of good information. So please check out episode 61. I have a very good podcast. Tonight is episode 62. Going to bring it to an end here. Thank you for listening, and thanks to our sponsors, along with you viewers and listeners that make this all possible. Our sponsors, I want to thank Spartan Waste, Fox Sports Spartanburg, Harrison's, Action RV, Kylie Glick Racing, Matman Designs, The Runner's Roost, Alliance Driveway Solutions, NL Moore Designs, Circle B Diecast, Driven Sunglasses and Driven Trackside, Elite Towing and Recovery, High Speed Auto, Boost Pops, The Racing Warehouse and Armadillo Apparel, Belcher Cheesecake Company, Fly and Form Concrete Structures, First Pacific Funding, Sherfitt Companies, Gale Beard Products, Wins Etc., Dialed In Focus Pouches by Whitetail Smokeless, Benzik Designs, Schattensbach Landscaping, Enigma Tattoo Studio, and then Jeremy Clements and Jeremy Clements Racing. Again, thank you to all our partners for allowing us, Bobby, Dave, and I, to do this podcast. And thank you to all our viewers and listeners for allowing us to do this. If there's anybody that has any suggestions or wants anything specifically for me to talk about during my race reports, just send us a message in our messenger on our Facebook site, or just send me a direct message on my Facebook site, Robert Sharp, and I'll gladly bring it up and discuss it. So on that note, thanks for joining in tonight. This concludes episode 62 of the Area 51 Racing Podcast. This is Rob. Thanks for joining in and listening. Have a good night. Peace, everybody.